இன்று நமக்கு சிறப்பு பேட்டி அளிப்பதற்காக செல்வி அபர்ணா ரகுராமன் லண்டனில் வந்திருக்கிறார். அவரை பேட்டி காண்பதற்காக செல்வி சந்தியா ஸ்ரீதர் வந்திருக்கிறார். இவர் பற்றிய ப்ரொஃபைல், அதாவது அவர்கள் பற்றிய குறிப்புகளை நாங்கள் ஏற்கனவே ஃபேஸ்புக்கிலும் மற்றும் எங்களுடைய பிளாக்லையும் வெளியிட்டிருக்கிறோம். மிகவும் சுருக்கமாக சொல்ல போனால், அபர்ணா ரகுராமன் அவர்கள் ஒரு பட்டிங் வயலினிஸ்ட், அதாவது தொடுவானத்தில் தோன்றிய ஒரு ஒளி நட்சத்திரம். வில்லுக்கு விஜயன், வயலினுக்கு பாலு ரகுராமன் என்று நான் அடிக்கடி சொல்லுவேன். அவருடைய புதல்வி செல்வி அபர்ணா. அவரை பேட்டி காண வந்திருப்பவரும் ஒரு சிறந்த ஒடிசி நடன கலைஞர். அவர் ஆங்காலஜி என்னும் புற்றுநோய் பற்றிய ஆராய்ச்சியில் இப்பொழுது ஈடுபட்டிருக்கிறார். அவரையே தனியாக பேட்டி காணும் அளவிற்கு ப்ரொஃபைல் இருக்கிறது. அதை இன்னொரு நாள் காண்போம். இப்பொழுது செல்வி அபர்ணா ரகுராமனை இதோ சந்தியா ஸ்ரீதர் பேட்டி காண்கிறார்.
Namaskaram. It's a great pleasure to be interviewing you today, Aparna.
Hi, Sandhya. Thank you so much for interviewing me today.
Not at all, it's a pleasure. So let's start at the beginning. You had the privilege of growing up in a very musical household. Your father, Sri Balu Raguraman, is a renowned violinist. Your mother, Srimati Subathra Raguraman, is a well-known veena player and carnatic vocalist. So can you share with us some of your earliest experiences of music and of the violin, and how your parents and your gurus have shaped your journey?
Of course. So I actually, to be honest, don't remember much of my childhood growing up in terms of music. I would say I started around the age of 4 or 5. And a lot of people do ask me, why did you choose violin and not veena and things like that. But when I was growing up, Amma was teaching in a music school in Tolworth in Surrey area. And of course, Appa has been teaching in Bhavan for the past 26, 27 years. And me and Abhishek were quite small, so we had no option to either stay at home or things like that. So every weekend consisted of us either going with Amma to her classes or going with Appa to Bhavan. So my entire childhood was surrounded with music. I don't think there's been a day ever in my life where music has not been present, or there's not something playing at home or things like that. But yes, I think I remember me just like picking up a small violin in the Bhavan and just trying it out and things like that. And I think I just got used to it that way. Um, Obviously, I'm so grateful to have parents like Amma and Appa who are already musicians. And my tata as well, Sri Shankar Rajamani, who's also a renowned Mridangam artist as well. So obviously going back to India and seeing him perform with such renowned musicians like Ramani and things like that, and people like that, definitely did inspire me and like give me that motivation at a young age, saying, okay, maybe I should be doing these things one day and things like that. So that definitely boosted my childhood, especially in music. I would say I didn't really take my musical career that seriously until about 2022,
Okay.
2021, after I finished my GCSEs, I think. But up until then, it was more getting used to the instrument, attending concerts,
Mhm.
sort of tagging along with Amma and Appa everywhere I go, um, and joining in with their activities as well.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things that has helped me to be where I am today. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so that actually leads on very nicely to the next question. You completed your Arangetram in 2022 at the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan in London. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey towards that? Kind of how was the preparation for you? Were there any particular highlights or very special pieces that you played in that?
Of course. So I did my Arangetram on the 16th of July in 2022. And I never really had an idea of doing an Arangetram actually. Um, in all honesty, I'm not really the biggest fan of the idea of an Arangetram. I
Mhm.
think in the UK, especially, I think it's really misunderstood by a lot of students taking an Arangetram, preparing so much for it. And then after they finish their Arangetram, it's like they don't really come back to the art form. They don't really come back to the instrument at all.
Mhm.
It was kind of like the last thing that they did to sort of, get the name, oh, I've completed my Arangetram, I've done this much. And I've not completed any grade exams or anything. So everything I've done up until this point is all performing experience and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, so I think my Arangetram was more to celebrate Appa's 25th year at the Bhavan. And I kind of took it in that way, and I kind of wanted it to more to be a sort of concert rather than an Arangetram.
Yeah.
Um, and from a very young age, I remember, so I was very grateful to have Srimushnam Rajaramama to accompany me on the Mridangam. And I remember in 2009 when he had come to London, um, I was down with chickenpox at the time, and Amma would say this all the time to me, and she would tell me this story.
Mhm.
But he would always say, like, when she grows up, like, I always want to accompany her on the Mridangam if she does an Arangetram and things like that. And by God's grace, it did happen. And it was so nice for him to be accompanying me as well. And I think I was only, what, 16, 17 at the time.
Mhm.
So it was quite daunting to sit on stage with such an accomplished musician, still understanding the dynamics on stage, off stage, during rehearsals and things like that. But we did have, I think I started preparing from around, properly around 5 or 6 months before.
Mhm.
And I think leading, like the week building up to my Arangetram was definitely a lot stressful.
Yeah.
Um, Juggling with school, and I had like my end of year exams at the time and things like that. But I will say that like the people around me did really help
Mhm.
in terms of keeping me on check,
Yeah.
making sure I was on track and things like that. But I think my Arangetram was definitely one of the most memorable experiences I've had in my musical journey.
Nice.
I ended up, for example, I ended up playing or starting the wrong song.
Oh,
So I played my Yaman Kalyani Alap,
yeah.
and then I was supposed to play Bhavayami Gopalam, and then I accidentally played Krishnani Begana instead. So that was something that happened,
Nice.
which was quite memorable. And I always think back to that moment as well, from time to time. But yeah, definitely one of the most memorable experiences that I've had, and something that I will cherish for a long time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned obviously that some people complete their Arangetram and then kind of take a pause with the art form, but I think for you it was absolutely not the case because you've had some really exciting performance opportunities since then. For example, you performed at Royal Festival Hall, you toured Italy with the Isha Foundation. And you've also been on the Bard Festival, which is a very prestigious platform for South Asian arts in the UK. And most recently, you were performing in India for the music festival, which must have been really exciting. So, do you want to share a little bit about those experiences with us?
Yeah, of course. So I decided after school, so I finished my A levels in 2023.
Mhm.
And I've always wanted to take a gap year just to do music and things like that. So I decided to take a year out.
Mhm.
And I went to Italy in October 2023 as part of Isha Foundation, and I was part of Sounds of Isha for Sadhguru's event. Honestly, I that was one of the most amazing experiences I've had.
Yeah.
It was in an audience with around 8 to 9,000 people, and it was, from what I can remember, I think a 6 to 7 hour event.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was around 2 or 3 days of preparation,
Mhm.
intense preparation, and
Yeah.
then on the day it just happened, and Sadhguru was obviously talking, and he was having his talks and things like that, and in between we would play during interludes, breaks, and things like that. So it was
Mhm.
definitely a lot different uh, to what I've been performing in the UK and in India.
Yeah.
It wasn't Carnatic based at all. However, I just adapted and used my Carnatic knowledge to adapt to their style of music and things like
Right.
that. Um, but it was definitely a really nice experience meeting new people,
Mhm.
and knowing their experiences with Sounds of Isha and Isha Foundation and everything. So that was really nice.
Mhm.
Darbar, so I performed with Darbar Festival in October in 2024, so just recently. But I had my first performance with Darbar in May 2023,
Okay.
and that was in St. Martin's in the Fields in London as well. So it was really nice to perform with Darbar again. I think what they're doing is amazing. Um, Sharing so many musical experiences. I think they do a lot of interviews as well. They've got Darbar Player, which is like their online platform, I think, um, and having their own music season and festival like we have in India as well. So they have it here as well in October, which is really nice. So I think for us international people, it's quite nice to sort of feel Chennai vibes from home. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so which is really nice. And playing for Darbar is always such a pleasure.
Mhm.
Um, at such a prestigious venue like the Barbican, I don't think it can get any better than that. And the audience I had was absolutely amazing. I didn't expect such a turnout at that concert, and honestly, it was the most welcoming performance I've ever played. And it just felt really homely as well. Um, India. So I just came back from India 2 days ago.
Mhm.
I was there for the season this year and or last year. Um, and I played my first season this time. And it definitely was fun, but there it did come with its challenges and difficulties. Um, I had around 7 to 8 concerts. I started my first concert accompanying Sridhar A.S. Murali at Kapalishwar Kovil in Mylapore. And that was definitely an experience in itself. I think accompanying such a prestigious and such a well-known artist definitely gives you that motivation to sort of bring out your own flair for music and things like that.
Mhm.
It did definitely allow me to express myself on stage to my fullest, which was really nice.
Yeah.
Sorry. And that was sort of a nice way to start my season.
Mhm.
And then I continued to have more concerts as time goes, and everything was all over the place. I was getting more concerts during my
Yeah.
season, and people calling me up and saying, "Can you play here? Can you play here?" and things like that. So nothing was sort of set in stone. It was kind of just taking it as it goes. Um, I don't know if a lot of people know this about me, but I tend to be quite introverted. I'm not really the best at, I think, having the confidence to talk to people, but I think in the music field, it's so important to put yourself out there. It kind of forces you to throw yourself in the deep end, knowing that you're in a comfortable environment and
Mhm.
everyone's sort of supporting you around, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it did come with its difficulties, but it's definitely something I would definitely do again. And yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that must have been an incredible experience,
Yeah.
great networking opportunity, as you said.
Yes.
So I just wanted to kind of touch on, the future of Carnatic violin, Carnatic music in the UK, because I personally have seen that South Asian classical arts have really grown over the past few years in the UK, but
Mm.
we still have a long way to go in terms of being on a kind of mainstream artistic platform.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is down to your generation and people like yourself. So I think there'll be many violin students who'll be in a similar position to you when you were preparing for your Arangetram, for example, where you kind of have to juggle your schoolwork and academic commitments with learning and engaging with the art form, which in itself is quite, time consuming and requires a lot of dedication and
Yeah.
focus. So what was your experience of this? How did you manage it and kind of what advice would you give to people in that situation?
Yeah. Um, I think the main advice is like time management. It
Hmm.
sounds really simple, but I think it's the most important thing.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say I've perfected balancing my academics with music. It's definitely something I've always struggled with. It's definitely something I will struggle with in the future, that's for sure. But I do know that it's not impossible. Most of my friends who are musicians are also at uni doing amazing things and still trying to balance both things at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, yeah, I think the biggest thing for me would be time management. having an organized sort of schedule, making
Yeah.
sure that I think, okay, if I share a personal experience,
Yeah.
during my A levels, I had my first third bar concert about a week before my first exam.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I remember going crazy during that time because if I wasn't practicing, I would be mad that I'm practicing and not studying. And
Yeah.
if I'm studying, I would be mad that I'm not practicing. So
Yeah.
I was just in that endless loop of,
Hmm.
okay, I should be studying or I should be practicing and things like that. And that was ongoing for like 2 months. Um, so there's definitely something that, you know, compromise is also there. I mean,
Hmm.
there's obviously going to be a time where I have to compromise one or the other.
Yeah.
But I don't think I should let myself get to that point, is
Hmm.
something that I think everyone needs to keep in mind. Um, I also teach, so I tell my students a lot to just, even if you don't um, practice or don't have time to practice at home because of exams and school and things like that, that's like completely understandable. But listening to music is so important.
Yeah.
Even if you're not actively playing the instrument yourself, having having noise in your ears is so important. Listening to any genre of music, it doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily have to be Carnatic, is so important. It really tunes your ears. It opens you up to different sounds and different things that you notice about each song,
Mhm.
which is something that I tell all of my students as well. But coming back to how I managed with education and things like that, like
Mhm.
time management is so important.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely the one and the biggest thing that I would tell people. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant.
Good. We have got time for one more question.
Okay, well, just a general question about the future of Carnatic violin in the UK. You know, how do you hope to contribute to this? You mentioned already that you're teaching, so that's a really good way of inspiring the next generation. But in terms of kind of engaging with society and raising more awareness of Carnatic violin, how do you kind of hope to do that?
I think I'll speak about Carnatic music as a whole in terms of just violin.
Yeah.
Um, but to start off, I think violin is quite nice because you'll never have a vocal concert without a violinist.
Mm.
Violin is a very versatile instrument in terms of accompaniment. So there's always going to be opportunities as a violinist, and things like that. But as Carnatic music in a whole, I think the UK have been doing much better compared to a couple of years ago and things like that. But that really does depend on the audience that we get for our performances. As a performer, as a musician, when we choose to put ourselves there on stage, our audience is our backbone.
Mhm.
You cannot have a full thriving concert without a full audience. You could be performing at such a prestigious venue, but if only 100 out of 2,000 capacity is filled, it honestly it doesn't demotivate us, but it is quite off-putting at times. Um, I think supporting uh, even young musicians like me and upcoming musicians is so important as well. It gives us motivation to do more and things like that. Um, I think the Bhavan Center is a prime example of that. They've been holding concerts and holding workshops as well,
Mhm.
for a very, very long time, and the work that they're doing is amazing. And I think they're really supporting young musicians as well. They also have their own young musician performance, I believe, called Yatra,
Yeah.
and things like that. So they've got dance performances as well as music performances, and I think that's really nice as well that they've been doing that for a while. But definitely more workshops,
Mhm.
more interactive sessions, for all age groups. I don't think it should be just buckled down to kids or adults and things like that. Um, yeah, just making it really accessible to everyone is quite important as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, really looking forward to seeing what you do next. And I'm sure we can look forward to lots of wonderful concerts, both here in the UK and in India and across the globe, really.
Thank you,
It was
Sandhya. Thank you
such a
so
pleasure to
much.
talk to you.
Thank you, Sandhya. for very interesting and relevant questions. And thank you, Miss Aparna Raguraman, for very interesting answers. Sorry, we should have given you more time for a budding artist like you, but there would be many more opportunities for you to come to us and then do interviews. And we welcome Miss Sandhya Sridhar as well for an interview at a relevant time. Thank you for your interviews. Thanks. Thank you very much. Keep in touch.
Thank you
நேயர்களே,
so much.
ஆஸ்திரேலியா, ஐரோப்பா, ஆசியாவிலிருந்து வழங்கும் ஞானமயம் நிகழ்ச்சியை நீங்கள் கேட்டீர்கள். இத்துடன் இன்றைய நிகழ்ச்சிகள் நிறைவடைகின்றன. மீண்டும் அடுத்த ஞாயிற்றுக்கிழமை நாம் சந்திப்போம். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
வாழ்க நிரந்தரம், வாழ்க தமிழ் மொழி, வாழிய வாழியவே. வானமளந்ததனை துமளந்திடு வன்மொழி வாழியவே. வாழ்க நிரந்தரம், வாழ்க தமிழ் மொழி, வாழிய வாழியவே. வானமளந்ததனை துமளந்திடு வன்மொழி வாழியவே. ஏழ்கடல் வைப்பினும் தன்மனம் வீசி இசை கொண்டு வாழியவே. எங்கள் தமிழ் மொழி, எங்கள் தமிழ் மொழி என்றென்றும் வாழியவே. ஏழ்கடல் வைப்பினும் தன்மனம் வீசி இசை கொண்டு வாழியவே. எங்கள் தமிழ் மொழி, எங்கள் தமிழ் மொழி என்றென்றும் வாழியவே. சூழ்களி நீங்க தமிழ் மொழியோங்க துலங்குகவையகமே. சூழ்களி நீங்க தமிழ் மொழியோங்க துலங்குகவையகமே. தொல்லை வினை தரு தொல்லையகன்று சுடக தமிழ்நாடே. தொல்லை வினை தரு தொல்லையகன்று சுடக தமிழ்நாடே. வாழ்க தமிழ் மொழி, வாழ்க தமிழ் மொழி, வாழ்க தமிழ் மொழியே. வானமறிந்ததனை துமறிந்து வளர்மொழி வாழியவே. வானமறிந்ததனை துமறிந்து வளர்மொழி வாழியவே.